The following announcement has been paid for by the WZWA Network.
WZWA Sports. It's in the game.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back here to the WZWA Network. You're with your boy Hogsley, and I've been waiting for this one for a long time, everyone. You know, I'm a boxing boy. Boxing's in my heart. I love the boxing, and this one I had been so excited for. Terence Crawford versus Errol Spence Jr. This is a fight that needed to have been made for years. Without a lie, in my opinion, this is the biggest fight since Mayweather-Pacquiao, and even that fight came way too late in their careers, okay? So right off the bat, I want to give a massive, massive props to both Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. for making the fight happen when they were both in their primes. As a boxing fan, you cannot ask for anything more than that. This needs to happen more often. More of these big fights need to happen. I'm sick of the dodging. I'm sick of people trying to lose their O's. This is what we want as boxing fans. Now, all that being said, for all the respect I have for this fight going down, you'll have to excuse me because my mouth's going to be placed firmly around Terence Crawford's member for the entire of this review. Because what an absolute masterclass performance by Crawford. I'm going to get into all of that and how much, just how incredible, how special Crawford actually is. But I want to give you a bit of backstory. I want to set this up. When I heard this fight was announced, I was so happy, so excited, because for myself, and I know for a lot of other boxing fans, this was a 50-50 fight in every sense of the word. Crawford, he'd already dominated the lower divisions. He was working his way up. He dominated his way through lightweight, moves up to junior welterweight, absolutely just crushes the competition there. Now, the competition at the time probably wasn't the best. He ends up becoming undisputed with a win over Julius Ndongo, who, look, flash in the pan kind of fighter. He gave a couple of great performances. He had this like straight hand that was just putting people just jellying their legs, just putting them to sleep, you know. It was for a while there, for a couple of fights. It was really exciting. But when you're talking about how someone's as special as Terence Crawford, the win was like expected, okay? So he blasts his way through that division. He moves up to welterweight. He fights Jooseyboy Jeff Horn. A lot of people, they're like, well, Jeff Horn's bigger. You know, he's probably more powerful. Maybe he can just rough Crawford up, because that was Jeff Horn's style, if anyone remembers Jeff Horn. He wasn't the most skilled boxer in the world, that's for damn sure. But, you know, us Australians, we play it rough. We don't mind getting a bit rough in there, and he gets dominated. He gets absolutely crushed by Crawford. Crawford, despite being billed as a smaller man, as a weaker man, he absolutely manhandles Jeff Horn, tosses him around like he's nothing. The strength that Crawford carries in his frame is otherworldly. So he blasts through him, right? But at that time, in the welterweight division, you had Errol Spence Jr., okay? And Errol Spence Jr., despite only fighting in that weight division, was absolutely crushing the competition. Both these fighters were pound-for-pound guys going into this fight, okay? That's why this fight was a 50-50 matchup. You had people like myself who thought Bud was going to win. You had people out there that thought Spence was going to win. You had people out there that thought Bud, Terence Crawford, was just going to cruise through the fight. You had people out there that thought Errol Spence was just going to dominate. Like, this was just a step too much for Terence Crawford. You had people on polarizing sides. You had people think it was 50-50. You had people think it was going to go either way. That is the essence of a great fight, where there's so much divisive opinion on how this fight's going to play out. But like I said, I was edging towards Crawford, because for a long period of my boxing fandom, Terence Crawford has been up there number 1, number 2, pound for pound, best in the world, okay? I used to have Lomachenko up there. Not anymore. Unfortunately, he's fallen out of my top 5. But Terence Crawford was always 1 or 2, okay? So I've always had a great amount of respect for Terence Crawford's abilities in the ring. He's a switch hitter. He fights from every different angle, every different style. It's just fluid. It's just, there's no, some boxers, you know, you look at your Vladimir Klitschko, it's very just fundamentally just sound left, right, you know, guard up. Crawford is none of that. He's like water in there. The way he moves, the way he can throw punches from any angle. I'm going to talk so much more about that, so I'm going to stop praising that. But that's why I loved him so much. That's why I thought he was so good. But I thought Spence was up there. He may have had the more fundamental style, but he was the way he would walk you down and break you down, his body shots, the fact that he was a tricky southpaw, he had some good defense, he's good, great counters, he's got power, he fractured the orbital bone of Kell Brook in their fight. So, like I said, I thought this was just going to be a great, great fight. Unfortunately, this fight ended up just being an absolute domination of Errol Spence Jr., someone I regarded so highly, thought that was on that sort of level as Crawford, thought they were sort of, you know, like, here's Crawford, here's Spence. There's not much difference. It ended up being, here's Crawford, here's Spence. I couldn't believe my eyes watching this fight live. And I obviously did. I went to a local sports bar to watch this fight, so I wasn't going to take notes. I'm there eating my chicken wings. I've got my beer. All right, I was so invested. I was so just loving the vibe and loving the atmosphere. But I've done my best here to recall everything I've watched because it is just burned in my brain. But before I get down to the breakdown of the fight, I want to say this is the kind of performance that Crawford put on is why I love boxing so much. You know, I do these UFC reviews and I'm liking the UFC, but I love the boxing. Bruce Lee, what was his quote? I do not fear the man who's practiced 10,000 kicks once. I fear the man who's practiced one kick 10,000 times. And to me, that's boxing. In UFC, you've got so much stuff to focus on, so much stuff to practice, but when you can just dedicate and focus on that single aspect, that single domain of combat sports, this is the kind of special stuff you get to witness. You get to witness someone at the absolute peak of what the sport can offer. And that's what Crawford is. He is at the peak. You can think of the greatest fighters of all time. And I can't think of too many fighters that could ever put on the kind of performance that Crawford just put on over the weekend. Masterful, special, spectacular. You can throw every adjective at it, because it's all of those and more. And now I'm going to explain why it is all that. So as always, I'm going to try and break this down chronologically. And I'm not going to remove that member out of my mouth because I'm in love with Terence Crawford right now. So we'll break it down. We'll go down to round 1. Okay. I gave this round to Spence watching it live. But round 1s, they're tricky in boxing. Okay. Unlike UFC, round 1 makes up 33% of the fight or 25% of the fight, whether it be 3 round or 5 round respectively. In boxing, especially when it's out of 12 rounds, I'm not going to do the math in my head, but it's 1/12 of the fight. Okay, there's plenty of time to make those rounds up. So a lot of times it's a feel-out round. You want to just work out what your opponent's doing, see how they respond to your feints and stuff like that. You're downloading all that information about the fighter. So, and that's what Crawford was doing, and I think Spence was just a bigger aggressor in the round. So, yep, good on you. This is what I sort of expect from most first rounds. I give it to Spence, and then we move on to the second. Crawford did not need a lot of time to download this information. He has NBN out here. He's getting 100 megabits a second or whatever they say, because by the end of round 1, he had cracked the code of Spence that no one else had cracked. This puzzle that no one else could figure out. Crawford is that special that in 1 round he'd figured it out. And props to the training camp, all that, but whatever. So round 2 begins. And all of a sudden, these counter shots start landing. These counter shots weren't, just well placed. I mean, they were definitely well placed, but it was the jab. That's what I'm going to focus on, because that is, to me, why he ends up winning this fight, because this jab was countering any time Errol Spence tried to close the distance. At any point, he was firing out this southpaw jab that if you blink, you miss it. This thing was so blindingly fast, the TV could barely capture it. And it wasn't like a flick jab to keep him away. These were power. This was a piston pumping in Errol Spence's face. And Spence can't crack that. Spence can't solve that puzzle. I doubt anyone can solve that puzzle. When you are that accurate, that fast, with a jab, which is the best punch in all of boxing, that is hard to beat. And like I said, this thing was blindingly fast. This was incredible hand speed by Crawford. So we go down with so we follow the second round where, Spencer's trying to work his way through it. He's trying to be aggressive. That's his style. He wants to walk people down, but he keeps getting popped. But round 2, right? You've got time to figure it out. But not when you've been knocked down for the first time in your career, and that is exactly what happens. Spence tries to come in again, and this time it's a straight left out of the southpaw stance into the jab, and it's the jab that knocks him down. The jab was a harder punch than the straight left hand, and it knocks Spence right on his ass. It's a flash knockdown. He gets up within like 2 seconds. That's the first time he's ever been knocked down in his career. And Spence's resume isn't that bad. In fact, if anything, that was my only complaint about Crawford being pound for pound number 1 before this fight, was his resume wasn't the best. It's golden after this fight. But anyway, so round two's happened. He's been knocked down, and you're starting to think, shit, this might just be going Crawford's way here. So we went to round 3. And Spencer's like, well, fuck, I've got to change the tone of this fight. I can't have a keep going this way. I need to win this round and maybe get a knockdown myself to even this stuff out. So he goes in and he's aggressive. And look, if any other round you can give to Spence, you give him round 3. 1 and 3 are the only rounds he could have a say in winning. I personally, watching it live, didn't give round 3 to Spence. But some of the judges did, and I can see why anyone could have. I'm not going to doubt giving him round 3. So you go into round 3, and Spence, this is the kind of Spence I expected to see thinking about this fight before it started. Okay, this is the best Spence was in this entire fight. He was throwing the body shots that he's known for. He has Crawford in the corner. He's working him. But at the end of it, it didn't matter, because the jab, that sharp jab, was still just pumping away at Spence's face. Like I said, it's incredible to see. And the damage it was doing was insane. By the end of round 3, entering round 4, Spence's face was already swollen, red. He didn't even look like the same person who entered the ring to start the fight. And we're talking about 9 minutes of action. And in the first round, Crawford didn't really do anything. So that's about 6 minutes of action. 6 minutes of action had made Spence look worse than he'd ever looked in his entire career up until that point as a boxer. So that's why, in my opinion, Crawford is so special. It wasn't just the hand speed. It's the power behind him. The rhetoric, the story of it, and I think I mentioned this before, it was meant to be Spencer's a stronger man. He's a natural welterweight versus someone who's already fought down 2 weight divisions. So the only advantage, well, there's plenty of advantage, but the advantage was meant to be go to Spence. He was meant to be the stronger fighter. Just like when he versed Jeff Horn, he is showing that he's the stronger fighter against someone who's a natural welterweight who actually sort of needs to move up to super welterweight because he's outgrown that position, outgrown that weight class. Spence could probably fight at middleweight. Okay, he's a big fighter. And it meant nothing. That amount of power in his frame for Crawford is, like I said, it's insane. That fight keeps going like this, keeps playing out. It's round 4, round 5, round 6. Crawford, like I said, he's like water in there. He's formless. He's motionless. These counters were coming from the left. They were coming from the right. They were coming from weird angles. Okay? He has power in both the hands. No matter what Spence was doing, he could not crack that code. And he'd already had his own cracked. And he just kept getting busted up and beaten up. And he didn't win any of those rounds. Crawford is just dominating. And by this point, we're getting to the start of round 7. And he's lost 5 out of the 6 rounds, in my opinion, and had a knockdown. He needs to dominate the second half of this fight to even make it a close fight. He needs some knockdowns of himself. And I mean, everyone who I was watching with, we just did not see that happening. But so we enter round 7. And Spence is like, I've got to turn this fight around. Because he did. He did need to turn that around. So once again, he is trying. He's trying his best to pressure and break down Crawford. He's trying to land a big shot of himself. But every time he comes in, he keeps getting popped by these just counters from weird angles. And he gets knocked down for the second time in his career. And this uppercut was insane. We had Crawford on the back foot and he's moving back and he's actually in the orthodox stance at this particular point and he throws an uppercut. And it's not just that robotic, Klitschko just up and down, boom, boom. It's like this looping comes around and then just goes through and just knocks the chin up of Spence. He's on his ass again. And at this time, this knockdown, he's clearly wobbled. He is clearly hurt. He was getting rocked in the previous rounds before this. And we'd never seen Spence like this. No one had, he was making Spence his bitch all night. And it was just mind-blowing to see. So he gets up. I mean, absolute props to the heart of Errol Spence Jr. because there have been so many fighters that have fought Crawford. And the second he starts dominating like this, and he does just dominate most of these fights like this, they're not getting up and they're not trying to fight back. They go on the run, they go on the defensive. But Spence gets up and he still keeps giving it his all. If this eventually ends in a TKO, if that ref doesn't eventually stop in, I reckon Spence would have fought till he's dead. So I love that. I love the actual heart and spirit of the fighter. So props to Spence. So he keeps going in and he just keeps getting pumped. I cannot say enough about this jab. So I'm going to say even more about it. Out of the southpaw stance, this jab is just, hold on, here we are. Nope, yep, this one, boom. Get my directions mixed up. It was knocking the head back of Spence. This was something that your Triple G's kind of had, that powered jab that could knock a person out, knock any of us out. And it just kept pumping into the face of Spence. So eventually, Spence is like, he starts backing up, which, as said, this was meant to be Spence's game plan. He was meant to be walking down Crawford, and Crawford was meant to be the technical, good boxer, and countering and fighting off the back foot. But all of a sudden, he's pushing Spence back. And as Spence is sort of backing up, he catches a brutal lead right hook that floors him. So he's out on his back. He's lucky and unlucky in another way that he gets knocked down in about the last 1 second of the round. There's no save by the bell. He gets up. But he would have been, if there was a minute left, he would have been knocked out in the 7th. So that's lucky. But it's unlucky because he had to take another 2 rounds of abuse from Crawford. Because nothing changed, unfortunately. Round 8, you can at this point, as a corner, you need to think about throwing in this towel or stopping this fight because Spence had nothing. He is getting absolutely abused in the ring. And then we reach round 9, nothing's still changing, and he catches him with, I think it was another, just a big hook. And you know, if you know boxing, you know when a fight is going, when they caught a punch and the legs are they're trying to run in place as they're trying to get their balance back. So the ref's I'm taking a very close look at this, and the onslaught, just the follow-up by Crawford. Harvey Dock had no choice but to jump in and stop the fight. So for a TKO win by Crawford. And like I said off the bat, this is meant to be that 50-50 fight. And it was just domination, absolute domination, just a masterclass. This is a fight that would go down in history. Not only because Crawford is now the only male fighter in all of boxing's history across the 4-belt era to be undisputed, which is all 4 belts, in 2 different weight divisions. That's hard to do. We don't see many 4-belt champions because of mandatories, and you have to drop a belt because you want to fight the bigger name, make the bigger money. So you have to duck your mandatory, who may just be a bum. Not a bum, but that's the problem. Look, I could go on about how the sanctioning bodies are just a shit show. If you're champ, you can't be ranked in another. If you're the champ of the WBC, you won't be a top 10 guy for the WBO. So you will never be someone's mandatory, but you're one of the better fighters. So the WBO may have this other guy, number 1, who has no belts for a chance to get a belt. But that's not the fight we want to see. We want to see the champs fight each other. So it's obviously very hard to do it. Maybe other fighters could have done it in the past if the sanctioning bodies weren't such a shit show. But the historic significance of this is just massive. So it's historic in that way. But it's also historic for the absolute performance he put on. If you just want to see an absolute 10 out of 10, perfect performance by a boxer in his prime, watch this fight. Okay? This is the kind of stuff that a Sugar Ray Leonard would put on. A Marvin Hagler. You know, any of the 4 kings of boxing. And speaking of those, that's who Crawford reminds me of. He reminds me a lot of Marvelous Marvin Hagler. Because the way he can switch hit, he fights out of both stances, whether it be orthodox or southpaw, equally as well. He's got power in both hands that are just exactly the same, okay? And he can knock you out with any punch, okay? There is a very, very, very small list of fighters who can do this, okay? They might be able to do 1 of the 3 or 2 of the 3, but to do all 3 of those things is special, okay? So after this fight, without a doubt in my mind, Crawford is the best in the world. Number 1, pound for pound. No argument. You cannot debate this. It is him. He is him. If I think that's what the kids say. I don't know. I'm 30. Thank you, Naoya Inoue, for holding on to the pound for pound spot number 1 for at least 5 days. But you've lost it again because it's definitely Crawford. So, yeah, we'll give a quick review. Inoue fought Stephen Fulton. Okay, Inoue I've always had like maybe the top 3 to top 5 area of the pound for pound. An absolute special fighter in his own right. He moves up to fight the top guy of a division, Stephen Fulton, much like Crawford's done. The difference is Stephen Fulton was not a top 10 pound-for-pound guy like Errol Spence was. But in the same manner, he absolutely dominates Fulton for an 8th round KO, I do believe. I didn't think that one was worth doing the review for. So, where do the fighters go from here? Spence. This is not the end of his career, okay? Losing to an all-time great, there's no shame in that. I remember when Jeff Horn lost to Terence Crawford, and a lot of people was writing him off and saying, you know, it's disgraceful because he was meant to be the next big Aussie thing. I was always of the mindset there's no shame in losing to Terence Crawford, okay? So there's no shame in losing for Errol Spence. He can definitely move up to 154, and there's some great fights up there for him. We've got the Charlo, I think, Tim Su. So he can definitely start, picking up some belts over in that weight division. He's still a great fighter. Don't get me wrong. It's just, that's levels for you, okay? When the standard level is this, right, and you're one of these guys and everyone's sort of below you or around you, you think that this is one of the top guys in the world, right? It takes someone who's like up here to show that actually the top guys are up here, okay? That was the problem with Klitschko's era. Everyone Klitschko fought, when they fought each other, the people that weren't Klitschko, if Klitschko never existed, you'd think they were at the top level. It took someone like Klitschko, who was leagues above, to prove what the top guys actually are. So, he's still a great fighter. I mean, look, he's probably still top 10 pound for pound, top 15 pound for pound. I can't judge him too much. So where does Crawford go? Now, Crawford has a couple of options, okay? we have Boots Ennis. That is a very promising fighter that's making some big noise at the moment. Now, he's not really fought anyone, okay? While he's looking quite good, maybe he is special. He has not had the kind of competition that sort of like proves how good he is. Like the levels again. You need to show yourself against a guy to show you're here. I don't think he has a chance against Crawford. I think Crawford just walks through him as well. I mean, if he's just done this to Spence, I don't think anyone can do anything about that. I think it's a weight issue at the moment. The sky's the limit. Well, the weight is the limit for Crawford. I mean, you know, if he was to go up against Alexander Usyk, for example, I mean, you get to a point at some point where the guy's just going to be too big for you. I mean, I said there's a lot of strength in his frame, but, you know, you book Alexander Usyk versus Terence Crawford, I don't think many people are going to be betting on Crawford, and that's for damn sure. But that being said, I can totally see Crawford moving up to 154 and having his way there. I think he walks through Charlo, and unfortunately, I think he walks through Tim Tszyu. I love Tim Tszyu. I think Tim Tszyu might beat Charlo, but these guys are not on his level. They are not. This guy is an all-time great. We are so lucky to be witnessing a boxer of this skill. You know. So anyway, my question to you, or to everyone out there: what is your pound for pound list? Okay, do you have Terence Crawford number one? Maybe you still have Naoya Inoue number one. Okay, I wouldn't have a problem with that. He's walked through 4 divisions and made it look easy. So, personally, my top 3 at the moment is number 1, Crawford, number 2, Inoue, and number 3, Alexander Usyk. Obviously, Alexander Usyk has dominated cruiserweight and is currently dominating heavyweight. It's harder to rank heavyweights in a pound for pound in a way because they don't really have the option to just destroy their way through, you know, weight divisions like your Inoue's and to a bigger extent like your Pacquiao's. And I still think Tyson Fury, despite being just a pain in the butt for not fighting anyone, now choosing to fight Ngannou, I still think if he goes up against Usyk, he beats Usyk. So that's why Usyk's number 3 on my list. But that's my top 3. I'd love to hear yours. This has been your boy Hogsley. Absolutely loving what he's just seen, and obviously just could not give enough praise to Terence Crawford. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good shit, and we will see you down the road.
Because of copyright. Oh, Jake the
With Fluffy's dad's ass and Monet's stupid cunt daughter.
Network, that's the way we play. Good God Almighty. Network, that's the way we play. Get puppies. Network, that's the way we play. Get.
The following announcement has been paid for by the WZWA Network.